Cheap, cheap, cheap. Cheap, cheap, cheap.
Fresh, sustainable ingredients go towards our delicious burgers. Cabbage grown from our fields, and bread made from our wheat, meaning ingredients never have to travel far from where they're grown, by a well-treated workforce that never complains, capped off with our secret weapon, our patented vegan meat, harvested in a responsible manner from a non-animal source. Burgers by the graveyard keeper. That's you. You were in some sort of accident and you woke up here, in this low-tech medieval-esque realm, and you have to get home back to your beloved. So yeah, it's essentially a farming simulator, and most will probably compare it to something like Stardew Valley or others in the genre. But unlike most of those games, Graveyard Keeper isn't geared towards sentimentality of any kind, or even really making friends with the townsfolk. You interact with them more to progress the story. Sure, there's a relationship meter, but those are only filled up by fulfilling favors for them, essentially completing quests. Specific ones. You don't just give them gifts whenever you feel like it, and chatting to them won't improve their opinion of you. And none of these things will end with you being married to them. I mean, a lot of NPCs have relationship meters, but they don't fill up. Some don't even ask you for favors. They're just a mostly stationary character that offers a bit of text when you talk to them, with the capacity to sell you things. So at the very least you get more time to focus on crafting and developing your graveyard, and less on trying to please the masses and becoming a pillar of the community. Is there a story at least? Yes, but it's rather short compared to the gameplay. And spoiler alert, usually their ultimate ends involve the characters you were dealing with being coincidentally related. Hooray! Happy ending for them. And they talk to you when other quest phases develop as well. Not much. It has some gags and the beginnings of some good world building. It never goes far on this front because at the end of the day they don't show you much of the world. There's stuff they describe that you just never see. Like for instance the town that all the bodies come from. Also, unlike at least the main figures in the genre, there's very little customization. The only decorations you can place usually have a functional purpose as well. Plus there are no clothing or accessory items either. Not even character customization, so you're stuck looking like a buff hipster wearing burlap clothing, which stereotypically could become a trend. So it's all about the production, which is splendid. Firstly, it's not just about farming. You do run a graveyard after all. Bodies get delivered to you and you perform autopsies. Then you bury them to increase the prestige of your graveyard by giving those graves increasingly fancy grave fences and gravestones that you make yourself. The higher prestige means that more pilgrims will come visit your church, and thus you will receive more donations after your sermon. As you can see, typical to the genre, you wear a great many hats. But in all fairness, all the other farming simulators I've ever played refuse to give me the opportunity to preside over a parish. Is that the correct terminology? I don't know. I think the pilgrims are different pilgrims every week. They just dress the same. But with the hoods, I can't tell. Ultimately, a very satisfying mechanic. If it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. There's a myriad of reasons why it could. Hey, wait. Why is my prestige not increasing from these interred bodies? Oh, right. This person must obviously have sinful organs. How did I miss that? No one can dispute the uniqueness of this mechanic. Swap some brains, drain some blood, give them some post-mortem liposuction. Extract essences, fluids, and powders to produce embalming fluids that you can inject into the corpses to make them more fancy. For burial or zombification. This leads us to another pro of the game. This game comparatively has a very simple to understand and use system for automation. Zombie farmers, loggers, miners, alchemists and writers. And while they're busy with all of this, you have more time to focus on gravestones. Or fish or whatever. The crafting tree is also a bit different, in that you have to research everything you craft, by spending points that you earn doing most tasks, or reading. Red and green are easy to get, extracted from physical labor and nature. But blue is much harder and pertains to spirituality and science, so your progress will probably be impeded by your lack of blue points. And usually figuring out ways of earning more blue points will be one of your main focuses, as it requires more fancy work. Studying, writing, candle making? So the game sort of has an RPG element in it. Another way in which the crafting tree is different, it's actually rather to the point. Things never really get that complex. Your progress is usually impeded by you simply not knowing how to craft the following step. Instead of being long in terms of the amount of steps you have to take, it spreads out across multiple categories. Instead of a single big tree, it's a bunch of smaller ones. And ultimately, most of what you can make, you will have to make. Or at least some of it at some point. You must improve the church and graveyard, and you will have to do some crafting, alchemy, cooking, and farming to actually complete the game's quests. Which is nice, none of the areas will be neglected that much. Well, maybe fishing will, you only have to do a little bit of that. And I suppose you won't have to do that much cooking. But come on, that's usually more than this genre demands of you. Improving the church and graveyard requires a great deal of crafting and alchemy. Unless, of course, you really prefer cremation. And sure, you don't need that much money, but come on, I already made the zombies. They might as well make me more. And that way I can purchase something rarer. In fact, in this game, I was more inclined to now and then buy an item that would have been hard to procure otherwise. And generally in games, I don't do that often. I'm rather stingy. I prefer to scrounge it up myself. So this game mildly makes merchants more useful. The main problem that this game has, and it's not a big problem, it's just present, is the fact that it has unrefinements. Text errors, those NPCs with very little purpose, and just look at what happens when you produce more veg or goods than the warehouse can sell. Plus, you can't sell alcohol this way, even though you can produce a fair bit of it. Throw in some simplistic dungeon combat, as is becoming standard in the genre, and that's the gameplay. Visually, the game is good. It has a more detailed version of a pixel art style, with a feudal feel, soft light and brown amongst the green, both grass and slime. But, as mentioned, there isn't that much to the map to see, but nice and compact. This game is far more straightforward and to the point than games of this genre usually are, and thus its length is shorter at 72 hours. And I'm pretty sure I completed this game. It had a noticeable end. Unlike Stardew Valley and my time at Portia, which kept me busy for longer, and I stopped playing more because I was sated, not because I was done. The game is cheap on Steam, 130 Rand full price, 65 Rand on sale. That's 91 cents per hour of gameplay, which is excellent. And to download, it has an okay download size, as it takes up 1.5 gigabytes on the hard drive. Not the easiest download, but not the hardest. Besides, that's a lot of hours for a comparatively small download, even if Stardew Valley has a smaller download size, combined with a potentially longer playtime. And the game does seem to work quite well on the Warhorse. It does stutter and jolt, but little enough that I believe this game is playable in this state. But just in case, here are the graphical settings, you make the call. But once again, on the Warhorse I found it playable. Stereotypically, I suppose it isn't kid-friendly. You get to witness a pixel art witch burning, and when I described what this game was about to my mother, she found it morbid. And I believe that at least some of you will agree. I suppose the setting and the scenario was the only possible way to make this gameplay happen, because I would like to believe that there will be no funeral parlor simulator in our future. Although I suppose Surgeon Simulator brings us halfway there. The game is a unique farming sim with unique mechanics, such as autopsies, body quality, zombification automation, which is lovely and easy to use, and a focus on improving your church and burials. It has a unique build tree, and you unlock most of the things you can craft by researching them. That does give the game a nice RPG element. Plus, the build trees never get that complex in a straight line, but rather requires unlocking skills and research in other categories at times. And the main quest does force you to travel a fair distance down all avenues of work. Well, maybe not that much fishing. So, not that much is neglected. And actually, every step is quite satisfying. Figuring out what you have to do next, what to craft now. The visuals have a nice enough pixel art style, brown medieval feel. It's less colorful than other farming sims, if that's your bag. And you can progress via buying or work a lot of times, which means a slightly more viable game economy. But as you saw, I was still overflowing with boxes, it still has some issues. And the game does have a kind of calming, yet dark medieval tune. On the maybe side, the game doesn't really have much story. And spoiler, the story that is there has a lot of coincidental family reunion endings, the happy kind. But the game has some gags. Also on the maybe side, the game's focus is on production instead of customization, sentimentality, and building relationships. It's arguably more focused, more straightforward, to the point, and less meandering than this genre usually is. And arguably, that makes it have less mass appeal. Somewhere between Stardew Valley and Farming Simulator. Between Cozy Little Town and Let's Make Money Growing Things. On the con side, the game does have unrefined areas. NPCs of low value, text errors, some missing or unfinished ideas perhaps. Also, I've seen a reviewer, as well as a walkthrough I was reading, claim that the game was hard. Personally, I didn't feel it was that hard. Okay, sure, I required a walkthrough, mostly to figure out how to make the zombification automation work, but there really wasn't a tutorial for that. And it can be annoying to be impeded by your lack of blue points, because early on there aren't that many opportunities to earn them, and you may need to walk through to figure that out as well. But ultimately, I thought the difficulty was fine. I just put it here as a warning, because at least some of you will agree with those sentiments. And arguably, a higher difficulty would go against the reason why most people play farming simulators in the first place. Calm expansion to relax. And finally, another possible thing to annoy you is the fact that some characters are only available one day of the week. And that can be a long time to wait if you need something from them. Need to turn in a quest, maybe. And the walking around from place to place can be a bit grating for some, so here's a tip. Don't worry about the money, just go to the tavern and buy the teleportation stone as soon as you can afford it. Get it early and save yourself quite a bit of time. Come on, play it and experience the newest innovations in cremation technology. Introducing large patch of land, has enough room for 4 burners.
Cheap, cheap, cheap. Cheap, cheap, cheap.